for these who die as cattle. Only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifles' rapid rattle can patter out their hasty orisons. No mockeries now for them, no prayers, nor bells, nor any voice of mourning save the choirs, the shrill, demented choirs of wailing shells and bugles calling for them from sad shires. What candles may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes shall shine the holy glimmers of goodbyes. The pallor of girls' brows shall be their pall, their flowers the tenderness of patient minds, and each slow dusk a drawing torn of blinds. That is Wilfred Owen, Anthem for Doomed Youth. This is Ringside, the show where the sacred and profane collide. We got ourselves Ross Engel.
Hey everybody, how you doing today?
Paul Koch.
Yeah, let's get going.
Myself, Joel Hess. And a guest host here with us, a longtime friend, Pastor James Hopkins from Boston.
Good afternoon from the East.
And last and least, I mean, not least.
Yeah. No, you can say least.
Tyler, the intern.
Hey, guys.
A plague poem, you know, I thought I'd find something. John Donne's got some things here and there, but I think the reason why there's not like specific stuff like that is because it was basically for people up to like 100 years ago. It was called Tuesday. You know, it wasn't like, yeah. Oh my gosh, the epidemic of my lifetime. You know, it's like
there's probably one or two in the Psalms. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, no, right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like a normal thing. It's not focused on one pandemic. Like, yeah, there's pandemics going on all the time. You know,
our hymnal is filled with hymns that were written in the midst of those kinds of distresses.
Yes.
Yeah,
but it's not like this is in honor of the pandemic of whatever, you know,
No.
time. It was like, yeah, epidemics and earthquakes, wars, like Wednesday, stuff like that, right? Am I right? Or is there a hymn that's specific on pestilence?
Oh, yeah. Well, the one Philip Nicolai wrote.
Can you bring that up?
Like technically, like bring up audio of it.
So biologically,
Just start singing it, brother.
Yeah. Let me
look that up. Look that up.
Yeah, man.
We think of the bubonic plague, which was insane, like 200 million perhaps. They don't even know though, because it's not like anybody's really keeping track. Like you skipped over the poor, like 1, 3.
Wake awake for night is flying.
That's
20.
it. Yep. Yeah. The Vakatauf, right?
Is that
awake,
Vakatauf?
for night is flying.
Whoa.
I don't know.
I don't know what you're doing.
Is that the wrong one?
What I want to hear.
No.
Words,
I don't know. I just.
So what's
yeah, go ahead.
So was that specific to you? I love that tune and those words, by the way.
Great hymn.
Was that specific to a particular epidemic, pandemic, plague at the time?
Yeah. So, yep. Nikolai basically was conducting. I got the stats somewhere because I preached on I preached on that hymn with the gospel text one Sunday a few years ago.
Awesome.
I mean, he was doing, I think, somewhere around at least 30 funerals a day.
Yeah.
Like for over a year.
Yeah, he wrote it in 1598. He buried 1,300 men, women, children in 6 months. 7 to 8 funerals a day, every day for 6 months. Yeah, right. And he wrote
one hymn. No, I'm joking.
Well, he wrote 2 really famous ones, but yeah. Zion hears the watchmen singing.
So it was during it was during the Black Death. What was it?
No, it's too late for the Black Death, I think. Black Death, I thought, was 14th century.
That was 14th century, yeah.
But it had more outbreaks later.
Yes,
like, more limited ones. So it could have been that. I don't know.
I think it was because it wouldn't be extreme like it was for that time period. But then it kept on kind of hitting here and there until they started realizing rats suck.
Well, and there was a Norwegian Lutheran bishop who said something along the lines of, here on this earth, we carry one another to the grave. It's one continuous funeral that no one can stop. The whole earth is a graveyard, the whole race of humanity, a funeral procession. We don't simply follow the dead when we walk behind the coffin. We carry death in ourselves and hasten to our own graves. Boom.
Thanks for the
it's happy stuff right there.
Thanks for that.
What a time for the bars to be closed.
It's
right.
the funny that it was set to the tune of Old MacDonald though, and that's kind of funny. Here we go to our graves. Also, apparently a myth. I always like to say the ashes to ashes, we all fall down. That's actually a myth. It was not about the bubonic plague or any plague at all. Yeah. So
we just told my kids that the other night.
It's not true. It's called that's right. Ashes to ashes. Actually, it's asses.
That's how they pack them on the New York City subway, right?
That's all right. Okay, so what is that? Do you think we're overreacting with this? Do you think there's a sense of like crazy doom that they didn't even feel back then? I feel like people were a little more normalized, or the sense of doom now is less than it was when actually no one knew what the heck or how to even stop this plague. Those killing far more, and bodies are in the streets. Any thoughts? Am I crazy there? What do you think? I'm not saying they're happy about it, but
I definitely think our technology allows the fear to spread more rapidly. And so in other words, like, we know what happened in Italy, and we know China. We know these things, and we see the numbers, and we're constantly reminded of it. So like today, you get up and they're like, "Oh, U.S. now is the leader of most confirmed cases," right? And so like that, just that instant knowledge of what's happening around the world, definitely, I think, kind of fuels that the fear that is kind of wreaks havoc with people for sure.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else got any thoughts on this? Yeah.
I mean, it's the flip side of the information age, right?
How I don't
constant
know.
News, constant connection, so everybody's got thoughts, misinformation, good information. You can't always sort out which is which, but
And I don't know, maybe we are just that much different than we were a dozen or so years ago. I was trying to think back to the last time there was something like this, and what was it, 2008, 2009?
Right. That was kind of frightful before it happened. But
it's funny, like I'm looking back though, and I barely remember anything. I was graduating school. I was literally traveling internationally like every other week.
Right. Nothing stopped.
And I don't remember hardly anything about it other than on Saturday Night Live when they introduced the Peter Sarsgaard. Just a mask with Peter Sarsgaard face on it. And I wish I had one now, but that's almost all I remember about that year. Maybe I thought I was just 10 feet tall and bulletproof and didn't think about such things.
There's that a little bit, I think. Whatever, who cares?
H1N1. I was a pastor at the time down in Georgia. And that was the first time I heard, I think the diocese down there in Florida, they withheld the common cup from the people for the first time in who knows how long. And,
really?
Yeah. And I remember going, what the hell? Like, again, like, what do they think's going on here? It's just, but people weren't reacting to it the way they're reacting to this for sure. And, fear it's different now for definitely.
I think so.
People are terrified, and everything around you adds to it, right? So you go to the grocery store and they have tape on the ground to keep you separated, right? Like so you're not, the lines aren't piling up on top of each other, and it's like now you're looking at your neighbor as a possible
enemy,
contagion, right?
Yeah.
They're my, I got to stay away from them. And it's really different. Obviously.
What I'm hearing from you, Paul, is like that right now we as a culture are collectively, I'm going to finish this. We're responding in a way that it's kind of a herd effect where we see each other distancing, we see businesses shutting down. It's very, it's depressing, it's discouraging. And, maybe this is just a segue to a different discussion, Could we possibly in the church live this way also, where the things about our lives and the way we treat each other and connect with each other and worship and live in joy and hope, could that be as infectious as this fear and trembling?
Yeah, that's a good point there.
I mean, I
think we should start a fundemic.
Well, no, like I get what you're saying, James. You know, the idea of by the church being bold and saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." Would we maybe embolden other people to maybe, you know, in the words of Woody Harrelson, you know, nut up and shut up, you know? So if you think about it, right? From Zombieland. So I put out last week, 2 weeks ago, I put out on our Facebook page kind of what we were going to do at our church. And it's been viewed by 2,100 people. And that's huge. I mean, that's a lot of people. And I thought, you know, this is a great opportunity for... Oh, it was you over and over again, clicking it in the dark.
Sorry.
No, but I thought,
100-year-olds is a lot of people, Ross.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So 2,100, and my thought was by putting it out there, maybe it would embolden some other church that's on the fence of, you know, what should we do? Should we like retreat into ourselves? Should Christians retreat into themselves? Maybe it would be an opportunity for people to say, hey, you know what? Let's not. You know, here's something that might work, and be bold about it. I don't know. I think we as a church have a unique opportunity to kind of say, hey, we have a hope in Jesus. We have the promises in God. This world is not everything it's cut out to be. It's transient, and let's be bold. Let's love our neighbors. Let's care for the sick and the weak and the poor among us, and not see them as threats and potential enemies. Someone who's maybe going to get me sick or you sick, and therefore that we can't talk to them or, you know, extend the hand of fellowship to them from 6 feet away. I don't know. Right.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know.
Right,
I don't know about that. All
yeah,
right.
I do. I will say though, James, like I think there is like a calming and wonderful effect when God's people gather together around His gifts. So, like last Sunday here, we had probably a third of our attendance, which, you know, we figured that's what was going to happen, and yet the people that were here, man, they like, you know, I didn't shake hands at the door. We kept some of those things different, but it was like they were so thrilled to just go and be with other people, and to hear like to sit in church and go through the liturgy and receive the gifts. And that, you know, the most moving part, of course, was communion. I did a whole big spiel at the beginning. I said, look, I'm like, nobody's obligated to come up and receive communion, but we're going to do communion just like we always have. And, you know, and I kind of gave my personal view, and I said, look, we don't have a thus says the Lord, like you're not going to get sick by taking communion, but, you know, we have a confession of what is happening here. And I think all but maybe a couple couples in the church came up and knelt down next to each other and received the gifts of Christ together, you know, and it was powerful, you know, and people left, and you know, you get messages throughout the week. They're like, man, that was so incredible just to be together and receive those gifts in a time, you know. It's like I wrote an article. It's like when I go down to the hardware store, Ace Hardware is right next to my house, and I love it because you go in there and it's just normal. It's like that store doesn't really care. I guess they're just like, hey, you know, it's just like normal day, and you feel so good. I'm going there like every day because it's just like a normal experience, you know. There's not many people there, but it's you get this sense of a life that's bigger than this pandemic.
I potentially could have worked from home, but I'll tell you, that's why I keep coming to church.
Yeah, normalcy. Keep going,
sure.
Plugging ahead.
Yeah,
going forward. All right. I think that the church, we're here to bring, you know, the eye of the hurricane, the peace amidst the storm. And number one, that is the message, that is Christ, the words getting in people's ears and heads and hearts. But maybe also acting like we're relaxed too, sends a message. Like we talk about how God loves us and it's all right, don't be afraid. And then when we act afraid, it might send different messages.
It sends kind of the wrong message, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
People are looking at you as a pastor.
They are. And so being courageous does not mean not being afraid at all, right? Patton says something like that. Like, it just means not just going forward, even though you are afraid, actually, is what you do. So,
yeah.
All right, let's go out here to DNR. Do not resuscitate. News report came out a couple days ago. When you're hearing this, like 4 or 5 days, I'm sure you heard many of this. But hospitals such as Northwestern here in Chicago talking about having to make those choices of who to give care to, who not to give care to. NPR actually had a story today. This is Friday that we're recording this, March 27, about a I think it was a resident talking about making those choices. Turns out this is just a normal conversation, and they're looking toward the future. But it might be something. It is something actually. Every hospital actually has a plan. You might not know this of what you do when you have too many sick people and not enough beds. It's not actually a new conversation at all. I'm sure the Pentagon has thoughts on this, ready to go into practice. You don't even want to know probably the plans that the Pentagon has for possible crises. A lot crazier than this one, I think. Right, James? Would you say that's part of the case?
Yeah, we are wargaming a lot of different things. So when it comes to like national defense strategy and that sort of strategic response to major crises, there are plans in place
for anything, and probably for biological warfare. I would guess that we don't actually believe that's what this is, but similar scenario, I think. But I don't think we're at that point of like national defense. Although if you don't like the U.S., this is a great time to F around with us, I would guess.